A future king walked into a radio station and laughed about scones. That is the entire setup. Cream first or jam first, the debate Britain has been having for generations. William said his grandmother put the cream on first. The hosts brought out trays. The clip spread, not because anyone planned it to spread, because it was funny. Days later, Meghan's lifestyle brand posted polished scone content, cream, jam, a carefully arranged British tea table. The same week, the same prop, the same cultural register, just translated from a laughing radio booth into a brand reel. The internet noticed immediately, not because anyone needed to point it out, because the pattern is now visible to anyone watching. This is not really about scones. It is about whether a brand built on the promise of independence from the royal world has actually found independence, or whether it is still arriving week after week in the wake of moments it did not create. Borrowed weather, not our own. This matters more than typical royal drama because of what it tests. 5 years after the departure that was supposed to mark independence, the question is no longer whether the Sussex brand has profitable ideas. It clearly does. The question is whether those ideas can land on their own, whether they can generate cultural attention without a royal moment to ride on. This week answers that question more clearly than any single moment has answered it before. William did not plan his scone clip. He was on a radio segment. He laughed. He said his grandmother liked cream first. The hosts argued back. He went home. Within days, as ever, posted scones too. The aesthetic was different. The intent was branded. The result, in coverage terms, was almost entirely about the comparison to William. That is the structural point, not the timing, not the aesthetic choice. The point is that the most discussed feature of the As Ever post was its relationship to William's moment. Not anything As Ever itself was offering. The brand's biggest week of engagement was not generated by the brand. It was generated by a future king laughing about his grandmother on a Tuesday morning. If you are running a lifestyle brand, and that is the structural reality, you are not running an independent commercial property, you are running a satellite. And satellites are by definition dependent on the planet they orbit. Tonight we are going through the full picture, the scone clip and what made it spread, the As Ever post and what critics actually argued about it, the Angela Levin assessment that has been gaining traction across royal commentary all year, the Aston Villa phone call that became its own viral moment in the same week and what its dismissal told the audience, and the wider question that sits underneath all of it, whether a brand built on the promise of independence from the royal world has built anything that does not depend on the royal world to land. Let's start with William, because the clip is what created the gravity for the entire week. He was on Hard FM for a light radio segment, the kind of appearance a future king does when the institution wants warmth in the news cycle without staging anything formal. The topic was the cream and jam debate. The hosts asked him which goes first. He said his grandmother put the cream on first. He said it with affection. He said it with the quiet authority of someone citing a person whose preferences are beyond challenge. Queen Elizabeth's tea preferences are not an argument anyone is going to win against. The hosts brought out trays of scones. They argued. People talked over each other. Scones got waved around. William laughed throughout in a way that did not look managed. He was having fun. And that was visible. The clip spread because of that visibility, not because of any institutional push. Major British outlets picked it up. Royal accounts reposted it. Comment sections filled with the cream versus jam debate being argued in real time. It was effective specifically because nobody had designed it to be effective. It was designed to be fun. The difference shows in how content lands. Now, let's talk about As Ever, because the brand is the other half of this story. As Ever is Meghan's lifestyle property: jams, honey, wine, tea accessories, curated, photographed, polished. The brand has had a year of mixed signals. Some launches sell out. Some posts receive heavy criticism. The commercial picture is uneven, but the brand keeps producing content at a steady pace. What has been observed across that year by named commentators and by viewers tracking the patterns is that the brand's most engaged moments tend to coincide with royal news cycles. Not always perfectly, not always in obvious ways, but the pattern has been accumulating long enough that critics began naming it months ago. And the fact that named commentators are now tracking it openly is what makes the structural argument land with the weight it does. Let's be precise about what critics were actually arguing, because the online conversation went in several directions. The first argument was about timing, as Ever's Scone content arrived while William's clip was still generating active social engagement. The overlap in subject matter was too specific to be explained as coincidence. Scones are not a generic background feature of lifestyle content, they are a particular British cultural reference, and that reference had just been attached very visibly to a positive public moment for the future king. The second argument was about aesthetic register. The As Ever footage leaned heavily into classic British tea culture. Elegant lighting, carefully arranged china, the refinement signalling visual register associated with traditional British prestige. Critics pointed out that this aesthetic sits in specific tension with the story the departure was telling. The public narrative around leaving royal life was about building something new, something that did not depend on the visual language of the institution being left behind. The As Ever Scone footage looked to its critics like exactly that visual language translated from a palace context into a commercial one. The third argument was more structural and has been accumulating across months. A pattern exists where the brand's biggest coverage moments are not when it does something entirely its own. They are when it intersects with royal themes, royal imagery, or stories involving specific royals. The Scone moment fit that pattern precisely. The item that drove discussion was not the product, it was the product's relationship to a William moment. That was the deal it was supposed to break. It was written down in 5 years of independence narrative. The break has not landed. If Palace Insider is giving you the full picture, other channels skip, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of close reading. Now, let's talk about Angela Levin, because her assessment goes deeper than the timing debate. Levin has argued for over a year that the As Ever brand keeps unconsciously circling royal imagery because the wider Sussex narrative has never resolved its relationship to the royal world it was supposed to have left. Her reading is psychological as much as commercial. Whatever the personal motivations are, the visual evidence keeps pointing back to a world the brand says it does not need. You do not have to agree with the psychological read to see the commercial pattern. Levin's broader observation that the brand continues to draw on imagery closely connected to the royal world does not require any particular theory about intent. The footage simply looks like it was shot in the aesthetic register of a certain kind of British prestige culture. Candlelit tea settings, fine china, cream and jam arrangements that belong to a specific social world. That register is the one the royal family has historically inhabited most visibly, most consistently, most familiarly. Now let's bring this back to the Aston Villa moment from the same week, because it sharpens the contrast. William was at the Aston Villa match. His team was winning. Someone tried to put a call through to him. He laughed and waved it off. He was watching his football team. The clip of that dismissal spread on its own, not because it was strategic, because it was human. A future king at a football match, watching his team, not taking the call, laughing about it afterward. By every available signal, this is the William content that lands hardest in 2025. He laughs, he waves something off, he talks about his grandmother. And the coverage spreads. By multiple accounts from the press surrounding the family this year, this is also the content William is least involved in shaping. The match was a personal outing. The radio appearance was light promotion. He is not designing these moments, he is having them. And they are still outperforming polished branded content released into their wake. Here is the part that lands. The most effective public presence is the one that is not being managed at all. The least managed is the most effective. By every available signal, that is not a position you can replicate by trying. You can only inhabit it by actually not trying, which is structurally available to William and structurally unavailable to a lifestyle brand. And then there is the privacy question, which sharpens further. In various promotional content this year, As Ever's marketing has incorporated casual references to household members, which flavours family members favour. What the table looks like on a regular weekend. Small mentions. Almost throwaway lines. Critics have pointed out a specific tension. For a household that has consistently and publicly emphasised privacy, especially around the children, casually weaving family details into commercial product promotion opens an obvious gap. Supporters counter that mentioning someone's flavour preferences is not a privacy violation in the legal sense. The debate reflects the wider difficulty inherent in running a lifestyle brand while simultaneously claiming privacy as a principle. Lifestyle brands are fundamentally built on selective personal disclosure, showing enough of a life to make that life feel aspirational. Claiming total privacy while running a lifestyle brand is a structural contradiction that does not resolve itself. It invites scrutiny every time a personal detail appears in promotional content because it reopens the question of where the line actually is, and whether the line is consistent or whether it moves depending on what is being promoted. The Memorial Day timing added another layer. The as ever Scone content arrived during an American holiday weekend. Most Americans were at barbecues and outdoor gatherings, not at British tea settings. The aesthetic mismatch between the holiday context and the content's visual register was noted by viewers in real time. Whether that mismatch represents a strategic miscalculation or simply a calendar coincidence the brand did not account for depends on how much intentionality you ascribe to the post schedule. Either way, the timing itself became part of the discussion. It is a small thing. It is also a telling thing. A brand that has spent 5 years claiming American identity, launching British tea aesthetic content into Memorial Day is, at minimum, sending mixed signals about what audience it actually wants. Now let's talk about the wider pattern across the year, because the Scone Week did not appear out of nowhere. Richard Eden at the Daily Mail has been tracking the rhythm of As Ever's launches and the timing of royal events for months. Tom Sykes at The Royalist has noted similar overlaps. The accumulation of moments where royal cycles and As Ever drops align too neatly to easily dismiss has become part of mainstream royal commentary. Subscribe to Palace Insider and drop a comment below. Was the Scone post deliberate timing, or is the alignment something the brand can no longer escape even when it tries? The pattern, by every available signal, is now visible at a scale that requires explanation. Either the alignment is deliberate, in which case the brand is built on a strategy of arriving in the wake of royal moments, or the alignment is structural, in which case any lifestyle content the brand puts out is going to be read through a royal lens regardless of timing. Both readings are damaging in their own way. The first paints the brand as commercially dependent on what it claims independence from. The second paints the brand as unable to escape the lens even when it actively tries. What we know publicly is that the brand keeps choosing imagery that invites the comparison. Tea settings, British cultural references, polished domestic aesthetics. None of these choices are accidental at the level of art direction. Someone is selecting the props, the lighting, the cultural register. And those choices keep landing the brand in the same conversational orbit it says it left. Borrowed weather, not our own. Zoom out from the scones for a moment. What the week revealed is something the previous months of As Ever coverage had been suggesting more gradually. The conversation around the brand is still being shaped more by the royal context than by anything the brand is doing on its own terms. William's cream first revelation generated several days of positive coverage independently. The momentum was his. Meghan's Scone footage generated coverage primarily in response to it. Its most discussed feature was its relationship to his moment. For a lifestyle brand trying to build distinct commercial identity, that is the more significant observation. Not whether the timing was strategic, not whether the visual choices reflected specific intention. The question is whether the brand has yet arrived at a position where it generates its own cultural weather, where something from As Ever lands and creates its own wave of interest, a wave that does not require royal adjacent context to sustain it. The answer, based on the Scone Week and the months that preceded it, appears to be not yet. What observers keep noting is that the brand's most engaged moments keep requiring that context. The coverage that spreads furthest keeps finding the royal thread in what the brand puts out and pulling it. There are two readings of this, and they are not mutually exclusive. The first reading is that As Ever genuinely needs proximity to the royal story to generate sustained engagement. That the audience most reliably drawn to the brand is the audience interested in the wider Sussex and royal narrative. The brand has, consciously or not, calibrated itself toward that audience. The second reading is that the pattern is substantially created by media coverage rather than by the brand itself. Commentary around As Ever leans into royal comparisons because the people producing that commentary are professionally focused on the royal family. Any lifestyle content produced by Meghan will be read through that lens, regardless of its actual content. Both readings are probably partially true. The honest answer is that the relative weight of each is difficult to establish from outside the operation. The people inside it are probably not fully certain either. What is observable is the pattern of what generates the most coverage and engagement across the Sussex brand ecosystem. That pattern consistently points back toward royal adjacency rather than away from it. For the brand, the question that follows is whether that proximity is a commercial asset or a commercial constraint. If royal news cycles drive the largest engagement spikes, then orienting content to arrive during those cycles is a rational strategy, but it is also a strategy that makes the brand permanently dependent on a news cycle it does not control. A news cycle it cannot generate. Independence cannot be built by orbiting the planet you said you were leaving. To be fair, the counter-argument deserves to be stated properly. Critics of As Ever could be reading patterns into ordinary commercial behaviour. Lifestyle brands post seasonal content. May and June are peak tea garden season in Britain. Memorial Day weekend is also a major American consumer window. A scones and tea post in late May is not, on its face, a strange editorial choice for a lifestyle brand. That reading has merit because it does not assume bad faith. It treats the brand as a commercial entity making rational calendar decisions, not as a cultural operation deliberately shadowing royal news. Most lifestyle brands do exactly this. They post tea content in summer, they post pumpkin content in October. The pattern of seasonal alignment is not by itself evidence of anything more. The reason this counter-argument does not fully hold is the specific timing within May, not the choice of May itself. The As Ever Scone post did not arrive in early May or late May at random. It arrived in the specific days when William's Heart FM clip was still generating coverage. The subject was not seasonal tea content broadly, it was scones specifically. The same scones, the same week. Could that be coincidence? Once, yes. Repeatedly across a year, with multiple commentators tracking the rhythm. The coincidence reading becomes harder to sustain. Not impossible, just harder. By every available signal, the honest answer is that some of the alignment is calendar coincidence and some of it is editorial. The mix is impossible to establish from outside. What is establishable is the cumulative pattern, and the cumulative pattern is what the audience is responding to, not the individual posts, the accumulation. Bring this back to the radio booth. William was sitting on a chair, the hosts were waving scones around, he laughed about his grandmother. He went home, he did not check the social engagement metrics, he did not coordinate a follow-up, he moved on with his week. Days later, the scones reappeared on a different screen. Polished lighting, careful arrangement, a brand reel built on the same prop he had been laughing about. The discussion that followed was not really about the brand reel, it was about the comparison. The same comparison the brand has been generating, week after week, month after month, for a year now. The Heart FM clip is still online. The Aston Villa dismissal is still online. The As Ever Scone post is still online. And the 7-word question still has no answer from anyone in a position to give one. Is the brand independent yet? The most discussed feature of any As Ever post this year was not the product. It was the post's relationship to a royal moment. That is the structural fact, not the timing of any single post. The structural fact is that the brand's commercial weather is generated by a planet it claims to have left. A future king walked into a radio booth and laughed about his grandmother. A brand built on independence answered with polished scones. The internet noticed, and the most telling detail of the entire week was that the person whose presence generated the most reaction for the Sussex brand was the person doing the least to create that reaction, and the least aware that it existed. The most discussed thing about her scone was that it was not hers. That is the sentence that probably stays. Borrowed weather, not her own. So here is the question for you. Does the scone moment represent a deliberate attempt to stay close to the royal conversation? Or is it a pattern that develops naturally when a brand occupies this particular cultural space with this particular history? there's probably no clean answer. But the pattern exists across enough moments and enough months to be worth taking seriously rather than dismissing as coincidence. And it points somewhere worth thinking about. Drop your honest take in the comments below. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next. And a like genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of analysis. See you in the next one.